Good morning, CCI. This is going to be an interesting morning for us. This is the first time that we've ever presented these details for the literacy test this way. So this is a special welcome to all of this year's grade 10 test writers and anybody else out there who might be looking at this who's going to be writing the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test next Wednesday, March the 27th. As I say, this is the first time that we've ever had a chance to present this way. So what I would ask you at this point is to look at the slide beside me, and you'll notice that there's a bit.ly there. If teachers could write that down on the board, this screen won't be here the whole time. If any students have any questions that they would like to have answered as we go through the broadcast, if you would text your question to that bit.ly, it'll be pre-screened then. We want to make sure that we're answering the questions that are going to help the students the most, and then we'll be able to answer those during this morning's broadcast. There'll also be a section at the end for questions, and I just want to say to all the students out there, if you do have any questions, please ask now. Please ask your teachers now. On the day of the test, most teachers have to follow an actual script, and so they can't answer a lot of your questions. So if you can get all of that information now, that would be awesome. This morning's presentation, as you'll see now from the second slide, we want to focus on some of the tips and hints that might help you do better next Wednesday. Also, too, these tips and hints come from what we've seen from some of the diagnostics. And so before I go any further, I guess maybe the biggest thanks needs to go out to CCI staff who has embedded all kinds of literacy activities in your classrooms, and also to the students who've gone through Diagnostic, a book number 1 that you're getting back tomorrow, by the way, and the book number 2 that you just did the other day and took up. You've done a lot of prep, you've gone through a lot of experiences, and we're really, really proud of what you've done. But there are some things that we can work on getting even better with, and so this morning I'm going to focus on a few of those tips. And also, I want you to kind of think about what it is that you can control to make sure the best version of you shows up next Wednesday. There's a lot of times when we freak out over things that we have no control over. Don't do that. Don't sweat those things. Just focus on how it is you're going to prepare and how you're going to get the best version of you to show up on Wednesday morning. And then that is going to make the test go its very, very best that it can. So, some general information as we move on here. The test is next Wednesday, March the 27th. You're going to want to be here certainly no later than 8:45. You're going to be we're going to let you know where it is you're going to be writing, what room, and we want you to be in those rooms by 8:45. Now, the only people that will be in the building that morning are grade 10 students and anyone else who hasn't written the test yet. Perhaps they were away last year, they're now a grade 11 student, they were somehow previously eligible. Those are the only people that are going to be in the building the morning of the 27th. You'll have the place to yourself to make sure that this test goes as well as it possibly can. Why do we need to do this? Well, it's an ACQUEO test put out through the Ministry of Education, and it's one of the 71 things that you need to graduate from high school. Everybody knows that they need to have 30 credits, you have to have 40 hours of community involvement, and you need this one literacy test. Now, if things don't go super well with the test, there is something called the the OLC course where you can get that qualification that way. But that means things didn't go great on the test. So we don't really want to talk about that this morning. We want to talk about all the ways in which you're going to be able to get to that magic 300 level on this test. So what is it that we can control? I said that's what you really want to focus on. Don't worry about the things that are beyond your control. Just how do we get the best version of you here on Wednesday? First off, you've had all kinds of preparation. Teachers have been doing activities with you, whether they really looked like the literacy test or not. Maybe it was going over graphic text. Maybe it was doing some paragraph writing. Maybe it was doing some annotating of text. All those things are going to have helped. And then you also did those practice booklets like I mentioned before. So you get a feel for what that 75 minutes of writing feels like. And we want you to know kind of how the day of the test is going to go. And that's why we've done those booklets. And if you've thrown yourself into those full on, you're going to be, very much prepared for what's sitting for that 75 minutes or more, if you want additional time, what that's going to feel like. In terms of you, the night before the test, on the 26th, please, please, and listen to me, I talk about the same kind of things in my classes in and around exam time. To make sure the best version of you shows up to write that test, what I always tell people is, leading into that time, as crazy as it sounds, drinking lots of water, making sure you maybe take some vitamin C so some kind of crazy spring, cold bug doesn't get you. Go to bed a little bit earlier than you normally would the night before. And I know this one's going to sound crazy. Get up an hour earlier than you normally would. Now, some people are thinking, no, that's just not going to happen. I'm not a morning person. Maybe that's why. I want you to think about what the 10 o'clock version of you, or 10:30 right now, what that young person is like, as opposed to the one that shows up first thing for first period. Which one of those people would you trust to write the best possible test? My guess is that getting to class, 8:45 in the morning, kind of crawling through the wreckage kind of person, that's maybe not the best choice. The 10 o'clock version of you, that's the one you want. So get up a little bit earlier. Have a good breakfast. Take your time getting here. If anything kind of goes sideways that morning, you've got extra time to be able to deal with it rather than being kind of frantic when you get here. So please look after yourselves between now and then and make sure that you absolutely give yourself that time in the morning to kind of have yourself focused and have yourself be, sort of well rested and ready to write. And most of all, the attitude that day. I've talked to some students who left parts of practice booklets blank, or maybe they didn't fill all of the space. And they said to me, Coukell, don't worry about it. On the day of the test, I'll turn it on when I need to. I hope so. I really, really do. I hope that, and I've heard some people say oh, this is going to be easy. I've also heard people on the other side say, I'm really nervous. Can we go over a couple of other extra things? The thing is that I want you to know that you are well prepared. If you've done these things, you are well prepared and you're going to be able to do a really great job. Those people who are a little overconfident, make sure you still take this super seriously. You kind of want to say, as the slide says, you want to have your swagger, but being cocky is not good. You're going to want to make sure that you absolutely approach it with the seriousness that it needs, but don't be too confident. We actually have some questions that have been sent in to us. There's a question here. First off, where do we go if we need extra time? For those people, well, I guess I should say, first of all, everybody on the test has access to extra time. So here's how this is going to work. Mr. Maxwell has already looked at a bunch of the booklets and identified through student requests and from maybe some booklets where we saw there were some blank spaces, and kind of put together rooms where we know there will be people who will likely need extra time. And that way they'll already be writing in rooms where there won't be people getting up and going at different times. It all should, everybody will be kind of finishing in and around the same time. Booklet 1 typically takes a little less time than booklet 2. So it may well be on the test day, when you finish booklet 1, you might need, when 75 minutes is up, you just might need another minute or two. Take that minute or two right then. If you maybe then have a couple of minutes less on your break, then so be it. But you got to finish booklet 1, and by the way, it has to be done in one sitting. You got to finish it while your head was sort of all in the game. If by the time you get to the end of booklet 1, you still need a big chunk of time, at that point, let your teacher know, the one that's sort of supervising the room that you're in, let that teacher know that you're going to need additional time, and we'll be making arrangements to move you to a room where you'll be able to have additional time to finish that booklet, just so that you're not trying to still write when other people are taking their break. Sort of like the way Aqueo worked in grade 9 for math. If you need additional time, you went to this other spot, and that just so that you have a nice quiet place to work. If you need additional time at the end of booklet 2, you'll just keep on writing into what essentially would be lunch hour, and once again, you have as much time as you need to be able to finish that booklet. The one thing to remember is, though, once you hand booklet 1 in, done. You can't go back to it. So make sure that you've got everything done, however long that takes, before you hand it back in. I did touch on this one a little bit, but there were questions about what happens if a person isn't fully successful on the literacy test. We take those names And next year, we look at your timetable, and there is that OLC course that you can take in grade 11 or grade 12 to be able to get that literacy component. And it's also one of your 30 credits. If you don't have to do the test, can you stay home all day? I am going to get to this a little bit later. There is a set of 4 classes in the afternoon. All 4 periods, or I guess all 5 or 6 periods, if you want to say it that way, are going to be running in the afternoon. I believe there was a letter that was sent home, or it's about to be sent home, that talks about how buses will run that day. I'll leave those arrangements for that letter to communicate that to you. I know buses will run at regular times and then later in the morning, so you will have the opportunity to come in for the afternoon if you choose. For those people who will be writing, there will be a break for lunch. I'll show a schedule in a second, and that'll maybe answer some of your questions about how the actual flow of the day will work. But there absolutely will be a lunch break for those people who have finished, once they finish the test. And you'll actually find out, the last question that I have for now, you will actually find out your results typically in the early part of June. I can't really speak for all the markers out of Coukell. We don't mark the test here. They've already come in big blue cable-tied bins, and once you finish writing next Wednesday, we're going to put those back in those bins and ship them back to Toronto, and that's where they get assessed. They then will send us the results. We'll actually have a report card from them for each of you, and it'll be typically distributed mid-June. So back to the slides here. I think the next slide should be the actual schedule. So once again, if you're arriving 8:30, 20 to 9, that'd be great. By 8:45, be in the room when you're going to write. Once again, there's not a whole lot that's going to happen in that first 15 minutes, maybe some instructions, things like that. But it's just a chance for you to come in, get settled, maybe put your bottle of water out there, make sure you've got your pens and pencils and highlighters and whatever it is you feel you need ready to go. Oh, and by the way, I'm a big fan of mints. Bring a couple of mints. Always helps. Partway through a test, you're feeling kind of low, pop a mint. Even if it doesn't perk you up, who doesn't like a mint? Booklet 1, 9 o'clock to 10:15, 75 minutes. And once again, if you need a couple of minutes of additional time, take it, then take your break. And then, about 10:30, we're going to be starting up with Booklet 2. At the end of Booklet 2, whenever that happens to be for you, 75 minutes, maybe a little extra time. There is a student questionnaire where they'll be asking you things like gender, levels of courses you take, whether you use a computer, how much time you spend online, just some things, some demographic things to be able to find out if there's a connection between the results and maybe whether people have access to the internet or how much they read or that sort of thing. And then there will be that lunch hour I spoke of from 12 to 12:45. And then as you see, afternoon classes will commence at 12:45, and all 4 classes will run in the afternoon. If memory serves, and you can do the math, it's about 25-minute classes. There'll be an opportunity for you to get additional help and maybe work on some of the things that you're doing in your classes right now. So on the day of the test, make sure, once again, that you're there on time, that you're well rested, you had a good breakfast, that you're focused. During break time, I think we'll actually have a snack for you too. What you should bring: a blue or black pen, a pencil. If you've got your own, bring your own pencil sharpener. No one likes that person that has to go up and grind away in the middle of somebody else's thoughts. So make sure that if that's your thing, bring a sharpener as well. That's always good. Cell phones, please. At the very least, they have to be off and away. But it's even best if they're just not there to be a distraction whatsoever. And I think people get it. With about 140,000 people around Ontario writing the test at the same time, you can see why people can't be online and can't be communicating. And last but not least, ask those questions. Thank you to those people who gave me questions already. But once again, it'll be a chance a little bit later on for more if you have them. But a situation where, if there's anything that you can ask your teacher right then at the time to help clarify things, ask early. Because once they get into that script mode, it's kind of hard. In terms of the layout of the test, you've seen the practice booklets. You kind of know how that works. And so what you'll see there now is how there's actually, when you get your package on the day of, you'll see something that looks like what's on the screen right now, which is a question booklet and an answer booklet. And there's actually, obviously, 4 booklets. Question and answer booklet number 1, question and answer booklet number 2. Remember, Everything that goes into the answer booklet will be looked at by an assessor. Whatever goes in the question booklet is not. Those get recycled. So please feel free, as you're going through a question booklet, and if we're looking now at what the multiple choice questions for a piece might look like, feel free to highlight whatever you need. If you need to highlight keywords in the text, if you need to circle things in the questions, write whatever you need to in the question booklet, but then make sure everything gets transferred to that answer booklet. Nothing in the question booklet will be assessed. Very quickly too, I know this next slide has a whole lot of nuggeted information for you, but once again, there are a number of different reading activities. There'll be 4 different reading pieces. Most of them are actually going to seem more like informational text, magazine type material, interview type material. There will be 1 piece of dialogue back and forth between 2 characters, and all of those pieces will actually have multiple choice questions after them. One other reading piece that's sort of interesting is the graphic text. It's going to look like an infographic. It could be a graph, it could be a pie chart, it could be a schematic diagram. I've seen all sorts of things. Those people who've done practice activities have seen things like infographics on Canadian forestry or on energy use in Canada. I've seen things like bus schedules, where you had to try to figure out, if I need to get from North Bay to Kingston, what bus do I need to take in order to go to Union Station and then get on to Kingston by 4 o'clock? To be perfectly honest, that's a pretty interesting and useful life literacy skill. More often than not, in a real life situation, you might have to read a bus schedule more so than read a novel. As an English teacher, that pains me to say that, but it's true. Those reading activities, super important. Sometimes, and we saw this in some of the preliminary materials that we went through, people look at like a 2-page essay or a 1-page news report and they think, wow, I got to really throw my energy in there. The reading activities are basically 50-50 with those writing activities. There's sometimes a tendency to rush through the multiple choice to get to those bigger tasks. Please don't. Make sure you take your time, and we'll talk about a couple of little tips for those in just a second. But one of the biggest things is when you're doing those readings, make sure you read the answers or the questions first. Make sure you know what to look for, whether it's the multiple choice questions or sometimes the paragraph pieces that come out of them that you have to write. Look at the topics, look at the questions, make notes on all of the things that you can possibly remember as you're going through the reading, so that you kind of read with a sense of purpose. Write all over it. Write notes to yourself. Then when you go to answer the multiple choice questions, read all the options. Oftentimes there'll be more than one that will actually be right, or you could see as right. And if you just stop at the first one, there might be one a little further down that, if you forgive the phrase, might be righter. And so you want to make sure you get that right one. And if you've committed to one and then you see another one later on, you think, oh, that's kind of good, trust your gut. That first one might well be the one. Really put down the best answer you can. And please, always put down an answer. No, a blank one is always going to come up as a 0. If you have to just kind of pick one, you've probably eliminated your option, the options that don't work, and you're making an educated guess. And so hopefully you get the right one. And just before we move on to the writing pieces, you'll notice that they're listed here as well on the slide. The big one that everybody thinks about is the essay and then also the newspaper report. But those paragraph writing pieces, either the ones coming out of left field or the one on a general life topic, or the ones coming out of a piece of reading, those are super important. Topic sentence, example, explanation. And if it's a reading piece, quotes are key. Specific details are super important. We've just been reading a lot of the booklets that were done last week, or just before March break. There was that one piece about the polar bear and the climate change that asked you to identify the main idea. Some people did a really nice job of bringing in specific supports. They could have used a quote. The answer was still really good, but that quote, it really seals the deal. Keywords in the topic sentence, bring in a quote, echo back to that topic sentence, always going to be the best piece. And so just quickly kind of moving forward here, I think you've seen what a lot of these pieces look like. The one on your screen right now, you probably remember from one of the practice areas. It's really exactly like a magazine article. As we move on to the next one, this one, famous at 15, is a biography piece. There will almost always be a biography piece. The people who did the practice booklet just over a week ago, it was about an athlete having a stunning comeback. They love to do that reporty type stuff. So make sure, take time, annotate things, take notes. You've read the questions first so you know what to look for, and then write the very best piece you can for the paragraphs and the best answers for those multiple choice. On the next slide, there's two different things going on there. There's an example of the Whmis symbols. There's an example of a graphic text where they would be asking you to look at some brief bits of wording. In this case, it's a bunch of symbols. Once again, I said sometimes it might be chart material. Do your best to work through that. The other page that you'll see there on the left, it actually is another set of questions that find their way into the test. And they're sort of writing style, grammar-y type kind of questions. And those are ones that you just have to do the best job you can. A lot of it, it's like editing. You know, what word means the same as this? Which of the following sentences would be the best topic sentence for this paragraph? Which of the following sentences is written correctly? So it's a capitalization, punctuation kind of thing. So once again, you just want to be able to get through those the very best you can. So once again, you can see here, just a little bit of summary there. Read things over carefully. Make sure you answer everything and write it out in as much detail as you can, and make sure that it's in the answer booklet. Super, super important. Now on the writing side, the newspaper report, always in booklet 1. About halfway, maybe a little 2/3 of the way through booklet 1, you're going to find a headline and a picture, and your job is to write a newspaper report. We've been marking those recently, and one of the things that we found was that a lot of people, when they wrote their news report, they were pretty good at doing some of those standard things. They got a who, they got a what, they got a when, they got a where, and then they went on and wrote some other details that kind of sort of talked about how it happened or why it happened. And so basically, if you do that, the content is going to be solid. That why and how could also include you going out, like a reporter, and interviewing somebody, pulling somebody in who was involved, pulling in someone who was an observer of this event, whatever the topic might be, whatever the headline or picture might be. And so then you could have a quote from them, actually adding in extra details. Number one thing though, once you've got your content and you've planned that, fill the space. Make sure you write a full page. Markers, as soon as they turn to that page, if they see a half page, there's this sinking feeling. They know it's not going to be a well-developed piece because it didn't fill the space. So please do that. Also, some people wrote it as one big massive paragraph. Not horrible, as we're told by Coukell, but please, newspaper articles are usually written in short, blasty, 1-2 sentence paragraphs. It's weird. You don't really write like that anyplace else in school. Teachers are usually on you about making sure you've got a really good, big, developed paragraph. But in newspaper reports, they are short and blasty that way. Maybe this weekend, pick up a copy of The Connection. Most people get one of those delivered to their house. Or go online to Collingwood Today, which is an online newspaper, and take a look at the writing style there, and you'll see that it's short and blasty. And last thing that I want to mention here, I want to kind of pump the tires on CCIAM. The people have obviously been doing a fantastic job because you've actually influenced an entire generation of writers to write newspaper reports that actually sound more like TV or more like a morning announcement. Be careful with that. What I want you to do is read the instructions carefully. If it says that it needs to be for an audience that would be reading a newspaper, make sure you write it that way. If you make it sound like it's a morning announcement, it might be a good report, but the tone might not kind of fit exactly. And we don't want to give the markers any reason to think that anything was off in the least little bit. So obviously when you're doing something live, you pump it up a little bit. Newspapers are a little bit more right in third person, just the facts, no opinion, just the details. A little bit drier maybe, but newspapers are about information. So, kind of go with that. As we move along, after you finish booklet 1, and once again you take your break, whenever that happens for you, when you come back for booklet 2, the next piece you're going to see is the essay. Now they call it a series of paragraphs. We all know that a supported opinion series of paragraphs is just code for essay. Write it the way you would any other essay. It'll be on a topic that's not something you need to do research from. You just need to think about life, think about your own experiences, bring in details from your own experience, or even make stuff up. I remember one year, should students have part-time jobs? People would literally talk about jobs they didn't have just in order to be able to make the point that, yeah, it's a good thing, or no, it's a bad thing. In the instructions, it's going to tell you 3 paragraphs minimum. With this particular task, it's going to be 2 pages of writing. My suggestion, 5 paragraphs. If you've got 3 reasons why you think what you think, go intro, conclusion, 3 body points. If you do it that way, you're going to be way over the minimum and have a way more developed piece. The problem with doing just 3 paragraphs, minimum marks. And we want to make sure that we bump that thing up as best we possibly can. These larger writing tasks too, the newspaper article and the essay, they're marked out of 60 marks on how well did you develop your topic. Is what you're talking about really nicely developed and clear? They're also going to mark it out of 40 marks for writing conventions. You can get a mark of 30 out of 40, even if there are some glitches, as long as it doesn't take away from the reading. They know this is first draft stuff. They're not expecting perfection. But if it's really well developed, newspaper article or essay, and is edited as well as you can make it, you're really going to max out the marks that you have available to you. And so last but not least here, the tips for the writing tasks. There's a huge correlation that we saw between if a piece was not as developed as it could be, the writing, the rough work areas were almost always left empty. I don't know how many times I wrote down as a marker, please plan the specifics, please plan the specifics. So make sure that if you plan your detail, it's an absolute correlation. The more details you plan, the more material you're going to have to be able to write those other pieces super well. Stay on topic, making sure that you're always coming back to your main point in the essay. If it was that a 2-month summer break is a bad idea, or it's a good idea, make sure that that opinion is getting echoed again and again and again, because that's your point. Try to write neatly as best you can, and remember, you've got the time. Take time to proofread. The essay is tough because it's you've written an entire booklet, you're a good hour and a half at least into this, and all of a sudden you got to sit down and write this essay, let's say in a half an hour or so. And so it's really tough. And I applaud all those people that have the stamina to be able to do this test. It largely is the hard part. So more than anything else, I want you to be able to really stay focused and write that really, really good essay. Fill the space. Don't go over too much. I know I've conferenced with some people where they do go over, and I've given them the wording that they will mark, the markers will mark anything that starts inside, let's say, the 6 lines or inside the bottom of the essay or the news report. And that's largely true. But if you just have a word or 2 inside and then go on for another 3 sentences, they're not marking that. They want to make sure that you're clear and concise. So once again, you got this. You absolutely have this. You're well prepared. You've done all kinds of diagnostics. We've worked with groups of students that we felt needed a little extra work, a few extra tips. I've shared a lot of those with you today. And I want you to make sure that if you bring the best version of yourself on Wednesday, that you'll absolutely be sure to do the very best job that you can. And so what we want to do is finish off with a few questions. I know, thank you for to all those students who have texted those in. So we'll be able to address some of those. And at the end of this presentation too, if at any point you want to go to the CCI homepage and click on the CCI YouTube link for the CCI announcements, this presentation this morning now will be a taped version, so you can fast forward through the parts of me that you didn't want to listen to. You'll actually be able to get some of these tips again, or if you wanted, if your parents wanted to see what this is all about, maybe some of this would be useful to them. But I do have a few more questions. Is it an open level test? I think I can answer that question by saying the test is actually based on grade 9 applied expectations. It is, though, a test, and I think you've seen it if you think about it, material that comes from all courses around the school. One of the booklets featured a dialogue between two young people where one person was talking about how they did volunteer hours and got the idea for a mobile salon. Because the guy found that there were people who couldn't get out to get their hair done. And it turned into a job. In a way, that's a volunteer hour / careers type question. One of the other ones that we saw along those lines too was a person getting information on what it was like to be an entrepreneur. I mentioned the graphic text earlier. A lot of that material is the kind of thing you would see in geography or see in a science class. Or in a math class, information being presented that way. So it isn't an English test. It is not. Yes, you're reading and writing, but you read and write everywhere. You're reading textbooks, you're reading handouts, you're completing assignments, you're doing oral presentations, you're using language all the time. So it is meant to be essentially open level and coming from all parts of the curriculum that you will have done up to and including last year. For series of paragraphs, should we skip a line to start a new paragraph or indent? I would just indent. I've jokingly said sometimes, if you don't have a lot to say, write big. If you've got lots to say, write small. You just have to kind of judge that out. Luckily, we still have a pen and paper test that allows us that flexibility. If they ever move to a computer one, you would only have X number of characters, and so then you'd really have to kind of jockey things around. But I would just say, especially to start off, don't skip any lines, just indent, and that'll make things, it'll also help the audience know that you know your stuff. You know that a new paragraph starts with an indent, and so that's very, very useful too. Can you have snacks during the test? As far as I know, that's okay. I mentioned that we'll actually have snacks at break time for you. If you have a water bottle that you want to bring in order to be able to sip on some water, that's a very, very good idea. I'm actually a fan of people taking their Nalgene bottle and filling it about a third full of water, put it in the freezer the night before, and so it has a block of ice in it. Then you fill your bottle with water, and you've got a nice ice block, so when you're writing away, and you want to kind of just give your hand a break, you just grab onto that bottle. It's like having a cold pack there. Also, too, snacks, I think as long as they're not getting in the way, I don't think that should be a problem. Kind of usual classroom rules. How do we know where to go on the day of the test? You're going to be getting a little slip, a little letter, letting you know what classes you're going to be in. There's also going to be people like me the day of who's going to be walking the halls with a master list, so that if you look for me or somebody who looks like they are kind of running things, we'll be able to make sure that we get you to the right spot. But you will be informed of where that writing spot is. The percentage is basically level 3. As you go through and look at your results, that's why we've really wanted to mark those and get those back to you. And as I mentioned, that booklet 1 you did before March break, you will be getting back by tomorrow. And I know the booklet 2 that you did this past week, you kept already and had it taken up in period 3, the last period of the day. Basically, it's a 70. It's not just a pass-fail. They want you to be effective with it. That kind of language you see in level 3 rubrics, right? They want you to be effective. So that's the percentage that we're looking for. The number is 300. We don't know exactly what the whole test is out of, I don't mean to make that a mystery. I don't know if they mean to make it a mystery, but we know that magic number is 300. So it's a situation where if you are kind of going through and getting the very best paragraphs down, the very best writing pieces down, the most thoughtful answers to your multiple choice, you're going to hit that level. And do we get a break as soon as we're done booklet 1, or do we have to wait until the 75 minutes are over? The 75 minutes is a must sit, must be there. Go back over, proofread, proofread, proofread. Double check that nothing was forgotten to get over into the answer booklet. The booklet 1 is a minimum of 75 minutes. So you just have to, pace yourself, go back over, look at things. Did I fill all the space? But you definitely, booklet 1, you'll be there for 75 minutes, even if you do finish a touch early. The buses are running for the test. Once again, they'll run at their normal times at the beginning and the end of the day. There will be a communication that comes out as well. I don't want to give the exact number because I don't want to misquote it, but typically what they do is they run the buses a second time a number of hours after your normal pickup time. So, I said I wouldn't do this. Let's say you normally get on a bus at 7 o'clock and they're running buses 4.5 hours later. Your bus would also come at 11:30 to pick you up for those afternoon classes. Now that's just an example. Please wait for the formal communication of that to get the timing down. I thought it was decided that we could have conferences after the test instead of short classes. That's something that will be made maybe clearer to you through administration. I know we had talked about having all periods in the afternoon. It may well be set up as an opportunity, maybe more along the lines of a snow day, where you could go and work in a certain area with in a course that you had to catch up on. Administration will make that exactly how that's going to flow a little bit clearer as we move forward in the next week. It's crazy that it's only a week away. There's only like about 6 more sleeps and we're on. During the break between booklets, are we allowed to sit at our locker quietly? No, absolutely. We do ask that it's quiet, though, because as you can imagine, there'd still be some people in the rooms where they're writing, and so we don't want to be a distraction there. So once again, you'll absolutely be free to go to your locker, go to the washroom, whatever it is you need to do. Go get one of those snacks, and then get back and be ready to write the essay at the beginning of booklet 2. And when are we getting that second practice back? I mentioned that you should have everything in your hands by this point tomorrow. We're hoping to have those booklets in teachers' mailboxes, period 2 teachers' mailboxes, because in period 1 you get your report cards tomorrow, progress reports. In period 2, we'll have those booklets back to you, and then that should all be good. And once again, as you may move forward in the days, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, if you have any questions, I know I'm sometimes a bit of a moving target, but please come find me. A lot of the times I'm around the English office in room 228. If there's any other questions that you have, I'm more than happy to answer them. Mr. Maxwell can as well. A lot of times your classroom teacher who has administered this test in the past will be able to answer those questions as well. But I want to thank you for your time, and a special thank you to the period 2 teachers. I know we did a booklet in period 2. I took up a bunch of your time today. I'm hoping that this was useful, and I want people just to feel that nice balance and mixture of like being pumped, knowing that they can actually really knock this out of the park. And at the same time, they're not overconfident, and they know, though, you're prepared. You've done lots of hard work, lots of really good work. Now we're ready to go. There's nothing they're going to answer, or there's nothing they're going to ask you that you can't answer. So once again, if you need to kind of brush up on anything that I've talked about this morning, you'll be able to get this presentation now from the CCI YouTube channel. And thank you so much for your time. And good luck, everyone.